Welcome to Awakening Torah, Mussar Mindfulness. I'm Rabbi Chasya Uriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Kehilat Mussar. Delighted to have you here on Zoom or live streaming on our YouTube channel or on Facebook or any other medium in which we are. Welcome. We are engaging in our sixth sitting this week. We're in our sixth Torah portion, and we're moving into what's called Toldot. And we had studied it in the Jewish communities and chanted from it yesterday, which was Kaf Vav, the 26th of Cheshvan. The date was November 26th. And obviously today on Sunday, we're doing a review of that, November 27th, 2022, onto Kaf Zayin of Cheshvan, the Hebrew month. Actually, we're in Kislev now, so I'm thinking, actually, I was thinking that when we started learning this, we started learning the week before in our own time on November 20th forward. And so we moved into this happened, the Torah reading happened actually at the Bet, the second day Bet of Kislev, and today is Gimel, the third day. So I welcome all of you, as we usually do. We begin our practice with our kavanah, our intention for the practice, as we usually do. And so we're going to move into that together right now as I share screen with those of you who have vision and are here on video. For those of you who will be on podcasts and audio or do not have vision, I will read it out loud and you'll be able to hear our kavanot as usual for this practice. So we say that this is doing an act of caring for the self right now. You're taking the time to engage in your Mussar mindfulness practice to really strengthen yourself. We say, I'm doing this to strengthen my own soul in order to be of benefit to others in the future. And being by benefit to others in the future, you're benefiting God. That's how we see it. You serve others, you care for others. It's what the divine wants from us, correct? So then we say, I'm also doing acts for others, right? This practice is other-oriented. And so we say, this is something I'm doing to strengthen my relationship to others, so I can be a better conduit of God's good to others when they need me. Really shifting our orientation in life is what we see as avodah, as service to others, service of others, and of God. So before doing acts to strengthen our relationship with the divine, which is what we also see this awakening practice together, where we cover the weekly Torah portion from the lens of Mussar mindfulness. We say, this is something I'm doing to strengthen my relationship with the Creator, so I can be a better conduit of God's good to others when they need me. And so we merit this today. Here in our sixth sitting, may we really merit caring for ourselves, strengthening ourselves in our practice so that we can care for others. And so may it be so as you join me in exploring this week. So as I usually do, I give a brief summary. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read through this Torah portion of Toldot. If you haven't, this summary, I think, will help ground us, but then I'm going to focus on something in particular. So in this parsha, as you can recall where we had left off before, we have this new, well, they were newly married 20 years ago, of Yitzhak and Rivka, who chooses, like Avraham, to leave a far off land where her family lives, very courageous and brave. It leaves with Avraham's servant to go and enter marriage with Yitzhak. They share family in common, extended family. So Rivka, after all this time, actually 20 years of waiting to become pregnant, doesn't resort to finding a concubine like Sarah did, Sarai at the time, and handing it over to the husband, right, to reproduce with. No, she doesn't do that, and he also doesn't seek it or want it. They are the only relationship of our ancestors where they don't add on a servant or a slave to reproduce with the husband when the wife can't. Okay. So she, after 20 years, she finally becomes pregnant with twins. And apparently they are really struggling inside. Okay. And the actual verb used is even stronger than struggling. It has to do with bumping up against it's a real sense of conflict that changes you, essentially, not just an annoyance. Okay. And so she inquires to God, right? She actually says, what am I? What is this? What's my purpose? Why am I here? If this is what's going to happen. And we're assuming that she feels her life might be a little bit in danger, either she or the children. And so God actually answers her that it's because there are two nations within her, as if two nations can't live together in harmony. But the assumption is that these two nations cannot. They're really bumping into each other, perhaps even transforming each other. So the firstborn that comes out of this twins is Esav, right? In English, I think it's pronounced Esau. I never pronounce the English. I apologize. Esav. He comes out reddish and hairy. We don't really know what the reddish is, if it's his hair or his face and body. Comes out. And Yaakov is the second born, and he is holding on to Esav's heel as he is coming out. That is the whole lore and mythology around it. And then this is the part where you should anticipate conflicts going to happen. Ready? Yitzhak, the father of those twins, loves one of the twins. He loves Esav, and it's actually given a reason because of the game, the hunt that he captures and feeds him. So you may already be wondering, like, what kind of father is that loves a son simply because of what he brings to eat and then doesn't love the other son? So obviously, like all human beings, we're seeing weaknesses and strength in our ancestors here. She also is noted as someone who loves one of the twins, and it's not the one who goes and gets game. It's Yaakov. And no reason is given at all. It just says she loves. And this is the first time you're seeing parents. The Torah is teaching us and telling us that parents love their children. Okay, but that didn't exist. That language didn't exist with Abraham. You never heard that he loved Yitzhak or that he loved Yishmael. You don't even hear that he loved Sarah, or Hagar. But you do hear that Yitzhak loves Rivka, okay, when they first come together and enter marriage together. And now you hear them loving children separately, okay? That's the story. So years later, Yaakov, when he's 17, basically through what I would call duress and manipulation, he doesn't technically buy the birthright. What he does is he kind of manipulates his brother Esav into selling the birthright, essentially. Esav comes in from a huge hunt over several days, and he's starving and thirsty. And he says, what use is the birthright to me? I'm basically going to die. Please, feed me. Give me that stew. Give me that red stuff, is what he says. And so he essentially sells this birthright. What is the birthright? For those of you who don't know, ancient Near Eastern, what this means to have a birthright, it's basically special privileges and responsibilities belonging only to the firstborn male. Okay, so he lets that go. Yitzhak then their father ends up blind when he's older, and he tells Esav, his favorite, his one that he loves because of the food he provides him, that he's going to give him a bracha, a blessing. He tells him to go out and get a hunt, and he feed him, and then he will give his blessing. Rivka, who we all know from the previous Torah portion, she's a go-getter, right? She's the one that is at the well and ends up providing 250 gallons of water to 10 camels and to Abraham's servant Eliezer last week. Okay, so picture this woman, right? Young woman, lots of energy, knows what she wants, and she does it. She overhears Yitzhak basically saying that he's going to do this with Esav, and she basically wants Yaakov, her son, the one that she loves, to receive this blessing. Okay, so she ends up ordering her son 3 times by telling him to obey her voice, to listen to her. She tells him to put on Esav's clothing. She actually dresses him and put goat skin on his arms. She's the one that puts it on there. And so that he'll feel and look like and smell like his brother Esav, okay? And he goes in to essentially, through deception, steal this bracha, this blessing. And his father, who's blind, can't see that it's not him. He has his suspicions that the voice is actually Yaakov, but when he touches him and feels him, he can feel the hair, he can smell the outdoors, he can smell goat, he smells Esav, the son that he loves and prefers, right? And so he gives him this blessing. He leaves, Esav returns from the hunt and says, Abba, Father, I'm here to receive my blessing, give me my blessing. And then that's where the father chokes in such a shock that he has been deceived and treated this way. And he essentially, there's such an honor back in the old ancient Near East that when you give a blessing, it's like you can't undo it. It's something we don't really understand today, or have that kind of same honor and glory and kavod for what a blessing that a parent may give to the child and what it means and its significance. But back then, when parents, particularly the patriarch, the father, gives you a blessing, it's like it's almost like prophecy, also like what your future is going to look like, and it has very strong significance. So he says, I can't undo it, but I'll give you another blessing, essentially, right? So this is what happens. But you need to understand that Esav is so upset. He's also 17. He's so upset at being treated this way and losing and just not having that intimacy with his father and not receiving the blessing. He's like shaking and crying and sobbing. And it's the first time where we witness, in my opinion, more of him as a person than just someone who goes out and hunts and obviously he honors his father. He gets what his father wants. He takes care of him. But you're seeing here someone who really had attachment to a certain desire to be treated a certain way by his father, to receive a certain blessing. And his twin brother essentially took away that opportunity. And he's so full of rage that he is planning inside that he will murder his brother for this when his father has passed away. He wants to honor his father and not commit that murder while the father is still living. And Rivka, of course, knows this and learns about it and hears that he is planning to do so. And she, because she favors and loves Yaakov, she sends him away. She plans for him to go to her brother Lavan up in the north, very far up in Syria, to find a spouse, a potential spouse in the family to marry up there, that she doesn't want him marrying the local Hittite women, which is what Esav did, at least for 2 of them. So that's our summary. That's our background. Very intense. And to me, it's a very emotionally intense parsha. It reflects kind of the karma, to be honest with you, the karma consequences of this building up over time of how Avraham behaved, and then Yitzhak, and now we're seeing it happen in Yaakov. This will make all sense once I jump in. So what am I going to concentrate on with you? I'm going to concentrate on that Yaakov came in deceit. And it actually even says that, right? Not Yaakov. Yes, Yaakov. Sorry, I'm mixing up the children. Yitzhak actually says to Esav, your brother came in deceit. And I'm going to focus on that, okay? You need to understand that this 17-year-old came with reluctance to this behavior. And he came with reluctance, like any teenager, and I imagine developmentally appropriate, where at this stage in his moral and character development, he was more concerned with getting caught and the consequences. He was worried if he got caught, his father would actually curse him instead of bless him, than the morality of the act, okay? But at least he had enough of that moral compass to be concerned with getting caught and the consequences, okay? Because we could have even a person that wasn't aware of that or involved in that, correct? So here's this 17-year-old self. He doesn't want to do this act. You can tell by the language that is used, okay? So if we pay attention to the language in this chapter, it uses three quick, easy verbs. I'm trying to find the pasuk for you, the verse, where he basically, it says that he went, like his mother commands him. His mother tells him to go get the goat in order to create this guise, right? To this costume that he will dress up like his brother Esav. It says he went, he took, and he brought. Okay, he just did what he was commanded to do, where his mother said, listen to my voice, right? Which means obey my voice. Okay, so, but if you look at, so how do we know that there's reluctance there, right? If you look at Abraham's behavior, when he is, for instance, commanded to go offer his son as a sacrifice, he gets up quickly. He gets up early in the morning and he goes to perform what he thinks he's supposed to do, which is commanded, and he's obeying God's orders, right? So he also, Abraham gets up when 3 guests are coming in the desert at the height of the day, where I told you he's just recovering from surgery, from a circumcision. He gets up in the heat of the day, runs to them. So actually the language, he runs to them, bows to them, and tells them to come, right? So he hurries, he's quick, he runs and he hurries. And he does that even in the camp. When he returns, he runs to Sarai, tells her to quickly prepare something. He runs to the boy, one of the servants, and tells him to quickly prepare something. So there's lots of zerizut, this midah, this character trait of enthusiasm, right? Alacrity to perform and to take care of others, all right? And to do certain mitzvot, commandments, right? And then Rivka is also someone who is a get up and goer, right? She does something fast. She hastens in, she runs, she goes to get the water, she feeds the camels with the water and gives to the servant. She runs to her family. There's lots of energy to perform these, right? And you basically don't see this at all. And this is coming from a wonderful quote from Haketav VeHaKabbalah, which Nechama Lebowitz brings in her lovely new studies on Genesis, on Bereshit, on page 265, that basically the choice of the adverbial prefix to his following his mother's orders is that he's not hurrying, he's not running, he just does this like this. He goes and does what he's supposed to do. He went, he took, he brought. There's no hurrying, there's no energy, there's no excitement, there's nothing there. He doesn't apply himself, okay? And this is very common. It will turn out to be common for Yaakov. There's a certain passivity. It's almost what we're going to say in Mussar Mindfulness is that too much humility. There's like a sense of not knowing his proper space in that household, in the dyad, where it's like him and his mother and his brother and his father, and he doesn't know quite who he is, his purpose, and not figuring out what is his role in this family dynamic. And there's no enthusiasm, okay? And it's almost like you could say he was tearing. He definitely didn't have the hurrying and the running that we find in the other verbs that were used with our other ancestors. that maybe he was actually like tarrying a bit, to hoping that fate or God would intervene and stop this from happening, because he doesn't really want to put on that goat skin and go into his father who's blind and get him to give him the blessing, right? It's not, he's deeply uncomfortable by it. Even if the concern is just getting caught, he doesn't want to do it. He's fearful of being cursed. Okay. So, but his behavior should immediately start triggering in all of us that he's like his father. He's like Yitzhak, who comes out of almost being sacrificed, probably traumatized. He just goes, he does what he's supposed to do. He expands on his father's wells. There's sometimes passivity. There's not sure where he is in space. It's too much humility. There's definitely a lack of that alacrity, of that zerizut, that enthusiasm in his life. And it's probably coming out of what happened between him and his father and him, and losing his mother immediately afterwards, which is essentially kind of entering this orphan state, right? And that's how he feels inside. It's very heavy. One of our midrashim in Bereshit Rabbah actually describe his son's behavior, Yaakov, that he doesn't want to do this, right? That he's under duress, he's bent over and he's weeping. That's how they imagine him when he went under duress. He's bent over when he takes the goat, right? And he brought weeping. He doesn't want to do this, right? And that weeping is going to extend even to his own brother. I think both of them are stuck in roles that unfortunately the unhealthy dynamic between the parents and the splitting of this dyad has affected both of them. So what happens? Yitzhak obeys, obviously, Avraham, and walks off after that potential sacrifice. He doesn't hurry. Yaakov obeys his mother, and he walks and follows directions and doesn't hurry, right? So what ends up happening because of this deceit, if you follow Yaakov's life in this chapter, what we say, his name in English is Jacob, and what will come next, and Vayeshev and then Vayishlach coming up, is that basically the vicissitudes of his life, of Yaakov's life, teach us that at every step, how he was repaid for his behavior, measure by measure. And I have brought up this last Torah cycle, this kind of very ancient Near East understanding of the relationship with the divine, that God will expect justice sooner or later, and that there's this kind of measure for measure response. From Theravada Buddhism, we might just say that this is karma eventually playing itself out. This is consequences for deception. When one lies and it deceives, it has consequences, even cosmic ones that we're not fully aware of or have privy to that awareness or information. And so it's going to come out. So this happens to him, Yaakov, measure by measure, for taking advantage of his father's blindness, which we even have a law in Jewish law and halakha that you are not to put, coming from the Torah, you're not to put a stumbling block before the blind. Now, you can take that very literally and only apply it to blind people, but you can also apply it not literally and say, anyone, don't deceive them. Don't put something in front of them where they think it's a clear path and it's not. But here he's actually dealing with a real blind person that he deceives, right? Okay, so this is our ancestor Yaakov, a 17-year-old boy who by all means is doing what he is supposed to do, but he ignores his inner compass, his moral inner compass that we talked about. All of us is part of the divine spark within all of us that we have. He did it for a greater value. And back then, the value was that you obey your mother's voice, you obey your parents. But by doing this, this is the same of Yitzhak, right? He obeyed his father. So he went on the trip with his father and even says, where's the sacrifice? Where's the animal? Where's the wood? Father says, God, his father Abraham says, God will provide this, right? He obeys him. He follows him. He goes with him. And so this sense of developing children who are ignoring their moral compass, this inner voice, the silent, still voice that's going on and saying, this is not right. This is not what should be happening. This is not what I should be doing, for this greater value in their culture and time. And this has consequences, right? Really strong consequences of having too much humility that forms like low self-worth, low self-esteem. And another example is even Hagar, right? The concubine and the slave servant of Sarai. She is actually treated horribly by her when she becomes pregnant with Abraham's son, Ishmael. Sarah, from all purposes, the verb that's used is causing her, what's the word I'm looking for in English? Basically, she's causing harm and suffering. And we don't know what it is exactly, but that's enough for us to know. So she runs away, Hagar, from that behavior, from being abused. And she's told by the angel to return to that household, that domestic violence household situation. She too had a moral compass that she was trying to listen to and escape and protect herself and the baby within, right? And that she returns against that internal moral compass, okay? Because she's obeying the voice of the angel who tells her to return. And this is at harm and consequence to her son, Ishmael, also. So basically, what I want to say is that for our own practice of Mussar Mindfulness, what I think is a gift from God and our ancestors and supplying this story to us, which is very important, is for us to look in our own lives of when we didn't take up our proper amount of space, when we had that internal moral compass that was telling us this is not okay, how I'm being treated, or this situation, or I don't want this, and that we don't listen to it because we're either valuing what we think is a higher value or a better value, or we're obeying the voice of somebody, whatever it might be. We all, I can think, have situations where in our lives where we have done this or are in it right now, where in Mussar Mindfulness, we look at the midah of anava, of humility, and it's all about how much space do you take up that's proper to you. So we actually say no more than my place, meaning we don't take up more space than we're supposed to, but we don't ever crowd down so much that we're not picking up our space that Hashem, God, has given to us to live as a model and to be. We're never supposed to become smaller than who we are. And when someone starts to do that and they don't listen to their inner moral compass, that is becoming too small. They are shrinking, right? And it's a conflict between what is my place here, right? My place is to obey my parents, to obey the angel, whatever it might be, versus their space, that this is wrong. And I should have said no, or I want to say no, and I feel like I can't. And that's the conflict of when we're really looking at our midah of anava, of humility. What are we going to do with this when there's this chasm, right? This big rift between our place and our space. And that leads, at least in the Torah, and I think it does in our own personal lives too, it leads to trauma. It leads to exile. Yaakov has to exile and leave. It leads to becoming an orphan or an orphan state. It leads to harm and suffering of oneself and even of others. So may we learn from this Torah portion of Toldot how to simultaneously have our place where we honor our values and what's important to us, but also take up our proper amount of space to listen to that moral inner compass so we can come to balance that is right for us in this midah. So may it be so. We're going to move into our guided meditation practice to practice around this now. So I invite you to assume one of the 4 postures that we do in mindfulness meditation. So it could be a seated posture where you're seated upright. It can be walking meditation where you're not walking anywhere in particular. You're just going back and forth, listening to my instruction, my voice, my guidance. It can be lying down, hopefully, if you have vision, with the eyes open to remain awake and alert. And it can also be standing, where you feel strong and held, almost like a mountain pose. And we begin by inviting awareness. Just even verbally say it quietly to yourself. I invite awareness. I invite being still and present and here in this moment. Now, with your inhalation, inviting ease. Exhalation, compassion. Inhalation, presence, and exhalation, allowing yourself to arrive. Inhalation, kindness, and exhalation, arriving to the state of mindfulness where you are here in the present moment, awake and alert to what is here for you in the present moment. Allow your breath to settle to its own natural rhythm. The way that we build our self-worth and self-esteem over time is offering ourselves self-inner compassion for any feelings of inadequacy. And we kindly say to ourselves, may I be kind to myself. May I accept myself as I am. Or your suffering stems from external circumstances, we say, may I accept my life as it is. You may use any of these phrases to say, I wish to be, I hope, I want. You can add as possible. May I be kind to myself as much as possible. I wish to accept myself as I am. May you wish for yourself right now quietly as you whisper and hold yourself, as you build this balanced midah of anava, of humility. May I be safe. And even more important, may I know safety and the causes of safety. May I listen to that voice inside and build the conditions in life over time to live in safety. Safety of others and caring for those around us and all beings from inner and outer harm. And we build this self-worth and this self-esteem one day of practice at a time, saying to ourselves, may I be happy. May I know joy and the causes of joy. May I be a conduit of joy to others, bringing God's good to others and to myself. And we build the self-worth and the self-esteem over time. We say, may I be healthy. I deserve to be healthy. May I know physical joy and the causes of physical joy. May I know acceptance when I am not experiencing health. May I know deep compassion and awareness to accept the things I cannot change. May I have the wisdom to know when I can change things. May I have the courage to act on that. We build our self-esteem and self-worth slowly over time. We say, may I live with ease of well-being inside. May I know how to ride those waves in equanimity. May I know the causes of equanimity and well-being and foster those in my life. There is a Chinese teaching essentially of the good tiger and the bad tiger within, which we in the Jewish tradition call the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, the good, pure inclination that we all have coming from that divine spark, versus what is sometimes called the evil inclination, that shadow side of the self. And a lovely child asks the father, I have these inside of me. I feel these two tigers at war. What should I do? What should be my practice? And his wise father says to them, you will always have both. But what will dominate, what will be with you, is the one that you feed. And so may we, in our practice of building this self-worth and self-esteem over time, may we feed the pure, the good. And repeat after me, may I accept myself completely just as I am in this moment. May I be filled with loving kindness and extend it to others. May I take care of myself wisely, joyfully, with intention, with love, with inner compassion. May I be well in body and mind. May all beings be free from suffering and harm. May I be an agent for the good tiger, while honoring the bad tiger within. You may gently and slowly open your eyes if they were closed during our practice. Come back into our sacred space together here on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. I'm delighted to have you, and I will guide you in this next week of practice, which I told you comes from Rabbi Jamie Arnold and his teaching on what's called Torah Tamima, where we focus on one midah, on a character trait during the week. And for us, it's going to be anava, of humility, taking up our proper amount of space, but not beyond our place, right? We have to consider the needs of others. And so we will engage in that awareness of it, looking at our words, thoughts, and deeds, of how much we are practicing and building that healthy moral compass, honoring it, taking up the proper amount of space. And our avodah, our service, is really this self-care, this practice of doing this meditation, having that calm, quiet, still voice, and honoring it, being kind to ourselves, that we can extend that kindness to others. And the practice really on a daily basis is to extend that same type of compassion to others by modeling it, by living it fully ourselves. And so I highly recommend including in the meditation the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who is a professor at the University of Texas at Austin. She specializes in self-compassion, inner compassion. And the three key things that she brings to us is that we must have mindfulness of what's going on for us. So like learning from this story from our ancestors, are we not listening to the inner moral compass and obeying a different voice? And we must have shared humanity. We must realize that others too are struggling and are doing this from time to time, are not listening to this inner moral compass, and that we're not alone. And then the final thing is this inner self-compassion, to understand that this is a practice and it takes time to build healthy self-esteem. And so with that, we will attempt to practice that this week. I thank you for your practice. I encourage you to subscribe to us on our website and join our community. We'd be delighted to meet you and engage. And please do give what truma you're offering for our teachings to support the Institute. And we have a question coming in before we briefly say goodbye and have question and answer period. Jenny wants to know, how come Yitzhak, Isaac, was blind? Good question. The Torah doesn't tell us why he was blind. It is assumed throughout the tradition. Well, there's a couple stories. But first, the obvious assumption is that he's just an old man who has lost his vision over time. That's a simple, honest reading. But it's not stated in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah, why. Other people, commentators, Chazal from the Middle Ages, for instance, whether it be Rambam or Rashi or others, Rashbam, they bring the idea that his blindness was less of physical blindness, even though that was there, but more he was blind inside to how Esav really was. That's an interesting read, because they obviously come from a certain reading of who Esav is and having a certain negative opinion of him, even though I don't think that has to be read in the text. So we don't know, other than we're just told that he ended up blind. And there's a wonderful story. I mean, I don't think it's so wonderful. I think it's sad that when he was about to be sacrificed on the mountain with his father, that he saw the heavens open, and with his eyes, and even the teardrops of an angel, they were crying over him potentially being sacrificed, that teardrop drops into his eyes, and it basically causes them to dim and become blind over time. And so what I read behind that story is a sense of, when you have a child who, through the parents' zeal for their relationship with their God, decides to potentially hurt you in the process, even if you go along with it or consent, or maybe not even consent, just do so under duress or because your parent told you to, that's going to have an effect either physically on your eyesight or inside. There's going to be a dimming inside. There's going to be that which one has to live with and struggle with the rest of their life. And I think we witness that in Yitzhak. So any more questions or comments for today, Jenny?
And I have more, but I don't want to ask now. Next
Okay.
time.
Well,
Thank you.
feel free to reach out. You can
Yeah.
email with questions, comments, and we'll share and get back together. So thank you. Thank you for your practice today. Thank you to everyone present. And we, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, will meet next Sunday at the same time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I wish you all a fruitful, good week of practice. May you be healthy and safe.
And I wish you to have a very good sleep.
Thank you. You too.
Very late in your time.
Thank you.